Today I'm flying Saudi Arabia's low-cost carrier Flynas, but I'm actually going to be travelling in their premium class, which seems a bit more akin to short-haul European business class. These seats go for a fraction of the cost of business class cabins on competitor airlines on this route, from Dubai over to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. So let's find out how the service and the seat match up. Let's get going. I've honestly no idea what to expect from this flight today. I've seen a small number of flights on YouTube for Flynas, but they all seem to be in economy. I've not really seen anyone do premium. And from the few photos that I've seen of it, some of it seems to be in that Euro business style where it's the blocked middle seat, whereas others seem to have a proper bigger seat like you would get in parts of Asia and in the US on their short haul. But I've not been able to figure out which one of those I'm actually getting today, so I guess we'll find out together. So let's get over to the airport. Check-in didn't exactly get things off to the best of starts here in Dubai's Terminal 1. Flynas did have a separate check-in queue for those flying in premium class, however when I got to the front of the queue which had no one else in it, the check-in agent was a bit blunt, and she also refused to take my passport or start the check-in process until I could prove to her that I was flying in premium class, so I had to dig around my emails to find that proof for her. But eventually we were all sorted and I made my way through to security. Quite a long line today for both immigration and security, but eventually I did make it through, and I decided to go find myself a lounge. Flynas do actually provide a lounge to premium passengers on domestic airports, but none are offered here in Dubai, so I'm just going to use my priority pass to get into one to pass the hour or so before I'd be boarding. I was also hoping to grab a bite to eat and to find a nice bathroom that I could go get changed in. I was wearing some shorts and a t-shirt, which are a bit more accepted in Dubai, but I wasn't sure how that would go down in Saudi Arabia, so I thought I'd better dress in something a bit more conservative. There were 5 different lounges that I would have been able to access with priority pass that day, but I decided to make my way upstairs, walk past a few of them, and then decided to settle on the SkyTeam lounge. Making my way inside, there was no queue at all. I was given a friendly welcome, and I walked through into what was a pretty deserted lounge. Lots of seating options available, and I definitely had my pick of the seats. And in addition to the standard seating areas, there was also a separate TV room and a kids play area, all of which were completely empty today. I don't think I can ever remember being in a lounge this quiet, especially one that you can get in with priority pass. Obviously this is a SkyTeam lounge. I'm assuming there's no SkyTeam flights going on for quite a while. I think it's only priority pass lounge for the hours of 2 and 8 PM, so presumably most of the SkyTeam flights are outside those hours. But yeah, right now this is really quiet. I walked past the Mahaba lounge on my way over here. Massive queue out the door for that one. Just come over here, much better. A small buffet was available in the lounge. This had a selection of hot food and some cold food. Plenty of drink options too, including soft drinks and a good few spirits that you could help yourself to. This would be my last chance for an alcoholic drink before leaving for Saudi Arabia, but I decided not to take it. Just stuck with the food and soft drinks for today. I've got to say the food unfortunately was pretty bad quality. So if you're wanting a really nice meal, it might not be the lounge for you. I knew I was going to get fed on the flight, so I wasn't too bothered by that. And to me, it was worth having worse food on offer to have a much quieter space to relax in. Boarding was due to start an hour before takeoff, so I made sure I was down at the gate for that time. I always like to be one of the first on board, especially if I'm going to be filming the seat. However, when I arrived at the gate, I could see that they were only just disembarking the passengers from the previous flight, so we're going to have a bit of a wait on our hands at the gate. So I probably could have stayed in the lounge a little bit longer, but whilst we're waiting here, just want to say a massive thank you to my supporters on Patreon, and if you'd also like to support what I do on this channel whilst also getting early access to videos and bonus content, click the link in the description below. Despite the long wait at the gate, it was actually quite pleasant. Unlike the noisy, overcrowded areas you might see in places like the UK or North America, everything here was very civilised, plenty of seats, and everyone was just sat quietly waiting. When they did finally call us aboard, there was a very detailed document check that would take about 5 minutes to study everyone's passport before letting them through. But finally, we made it on board. Premium class takes up just 1 row on today's aircraft, and the seat is the same as in economy, but with that middle seat blocked out, similar to what you'd see in European business class. And there was plenty of legroom here on board today's A320neo. Ahead was a small storage pocket on the bulkhead. This had the safety card and the economy food menu. To my left you got the armrest, and the armrest on the right hand side also contains the tray table for today's flight. Quite a small tray table, even when folded out fully, but I think that slightly smaller size did make it a little more sturdy than these tray tables sometimes are. The seat itself had an adjustable headrest, although you will see I did have a few issues with this later in the flight. Between the seats was an additional tray table that we could use, and the seats had individual reading lights and air vents. Worth noting however that there was no in-seat power and no Wi-Fi available. The seat has a slight recline, not much, but I wouldn't be using it anyway for this short flight. I noticed that boarding seemed to be going incredibly slow. You'd have large gaps without anyone appearing on board. It seemed to be due to the long document checks that they were doing at the gate, but then they were also doing a further document check once people got on board. I had been getting optimistic that the seat next to me would be free, but eventually passenger in 1C did arrive. But whilst I was sat waiting, I really started to notice issues with the seat comfort. Firstly, the headrest was an absolute nightmare. It was just constantly sliding down. I'd push it back up again. It would last about 10 seconds and slide back down again, which was all pretty annoying and not helped at all by the comfort of the seat itself. This thing was rock solid. There seemed to be barely any cushioning in the seat at all. Now in fairness, that's exactly what I'd expect from a budget airline, just not necessarily when you paid a good bit extra for premium, and I will come on to that price a bit later. Once boarding had been complete, there was a bit of a further hold-up before pushback. There was no announcement made, but the crew were all having frantic discussions in the galley whilst ground crew walked on and off the plane with a walkie-talkie looking very stressed, and every now and again would be concerned looks into the cockpit. Eventually though, the doors were closed, the jet bridge retracted and we pushed back. And a passage from Mohammed's remarks whilst travelling was played before we got underway. And as we do get underway, let me talk about the cost of today's flight, just to give you the context of the difference here between standard and premium. But very quickly first, now when you travel as much as I do, it's really important to make sure that you're protected against the unexpected. And that's why I've decided to partner with Safety Wing on today's video. Safety Wing provides travel medical insurance policies designed with digital nomads, remote workers and long-term travellers in mind. Safety Wing's Nomad Insurance Essential will cover you for those unexpected injuries and illnesses, including doctor visits and emergency evacuations. But for greater coverage, Nomad Insurance Complete will provide you with full global health insurance. This covers preventative and routine care, serious conditions such as cancer, support for mental health diagnosis, maternity care, and more. And on top of that, both policies also provide cover for various travel emergencies, such as trip interruption and lost luggage. So if you live, work, and travel internationally without a fixed home base, whether for just a few months or on a longer term basis, check out Safety Wing via the link in the description and see if their policies are right for you. And so the cost of today's flight. Well, as I mentioned in the intro, this was a fraction of the business class cost of competitors. So looking at Saudia, I think they were wanting something like £1,500 for this route in business class. And Fly Dubai wasn't far off that cost either. Premium class on Flynas, on the other hand, cost me £288.89. That's obviously a lot cheaper than the competitors, but to be honest, you've probably seen from the seat already, I'm getting a lot less than I would have got with those other competitors because they would have a proper business class seat. So how much have I paid compared to Flynas economy, and what are the extra things I actually get for that cost? Well, it's a pretty significant uplift. A one-way economy ticket was 60 quid, so I'm paying £220 extra for the privilege of premium class today with Flynas. For that cost so far, I've had a separate line at check-in where I wasn't exactly greeted very warmly. I've had no lounge access provided, and I'm sat in a very uncomfortable seat that's the exact same as economy, but it does just have that middle seat blocked out. So all that's left at this point is that onboard service to differentiate between economy and premium. So I was expecting something pretty special from the food and drink service here to make up the difference in that cost, especially when you consider that it would actually be cheaper to buy 2 economy tickets and pay for an economy meal. In fact, for the price of premium, I could have actually bought 3 economy tickets to give myself a whole row, and also bought the economy meal and drinks, and still would have had money left over for extra baggage. So as Dubai disappears into the distance, let's get that onboard service started. Once we reached altitude, the crew jumped into action to close the curtain between premium economy and economy. This meant that just our front row was fully curtained off from the rest of the cabin, and the food and drink service then started. I was handed a bottle of water, and I was given the option of taking my meal now or later, so in theory, dine on demand, which was actually a pretty impressive touch. I decided to just have my meal straight away. This had been pre-ordered online and was a chicken biryani, which I was really looking forward to. This was served on the same tray as a few other little bits and pieces, which I honestly couldn't tell you what they were. And unfortunately, it did come with plastic cutlery. It was made to look metal, but it was in fact plastic. And the biryani, to be fair, was really nice. A little bit on the dry side, but not bad at all. As was the dessert cakey thing that came with it. Alongside the meal, I'd asked if I could get a Diet Coke or a Coke Zero, but unfortunately the crew didn't really understand. I don't know whether that's just that it wasn't available, or if there was just a language barrier. They were offering me tea, coffee or water, so it's possible that was all that was on offer, which is a bit poor if that is the case. The bathroom was initially just reserved for the 3 of us who were seated in premium economy, although eventually the amount of people who were coming through the curtain, the crew stopped turning them away, so eventually everyone was able to use it, but in theory it's just for premium. On a subsequent visit to the bathroom, I did find that the water was just running out the tap and it wouldn't turn off. This had just been from the passenger before me, it was just still running. And when I went to the galley to find the crew, I did find them actually just napping on the jump seat. And that kind of sums up the service, if I'm honest. In fairness to the main crew member who was serving us in premium economy, she was very friendly, and she did say if there's anything we need, she'd be just on the other side of the curtain in the galley. But unfortunately there'd be nothing she'd be able to do about that uncomfortable seat. On reflection though, I probably should have said something about the cabin temperature. It was very warm in there, even with the air vents blasting, I was pretty warm. But that's on me for not at least asking if they could lower the temp. But yeah, no other proactive service was offered at all. Once that initial bottle of water was finished, it wasn't cleared and I wasn't offered any top-up or any other drink at all. I did actually notice one of the other passengers at some point managed to get a Sprite. I think he'd gone to the galley and asked for it. So apparently there were soft drinks available, but I just hadn't managed to get past that language barrier. Unless he'd actually paid for that on the economy menu, I'm not too sure. But overall, it really didn't feel like a premium experience, especially when you consider the really significant jump up in price from economy to premium. It just felt exactly like an economy flight with an expensive seat selection and a very expensive pre-purchased meal. You get a similar seat setup when you do business class on short-haul European flights, but at least there the seats are slightly more comfortable. The food is generally a lot better than what I received, and the drink service, obviously there, would include alcoholic drinks and soft drinks. You also tend to get a lot more benefits on the ground in Europe, including lounge access and fast track. And I'd say overall, if you're considering flying Flynas Premium yourself, my one word advice would be don't. In no way is it worth the premium that you pay. If you want a budget option, then Flynas are fantastic. They really do have excellent economy fares, but you will get quite an uncomfortable seat. But if you wanted to get a bit more comfort and pay a bit more, there's a lot better ways of doing that than flying Flynas Premium. Firstly, you can fly Flynas Economy, book an extra seat next to you, and then just pay for an economy food and drink service. But if you don't want that rock solid seat, you could just pay a little bit extra to fly with Saudia in their economy. Yes, they might charge crazy high prices in business class, but their economy fares are actually pretty reasonable even when booking a one-way trip. And for the dates I was looking at, the fares for Saudia were about £100 compared to the £60 with flying with Flynas. Now, I've not actually flown with Saudia yet personally, but from what I've seen online, the seats would definitely be a lot more comfortable than what you're getting here. So to me, it'd be worth paying that extra 40 quid to go with them. Based on photos that I've seen online and also based on seat maps I've seen on Airline, I know that Flynas did at some point have proper business class seats, or at least business class style seats that they were using in premium class. But I've not been able to find any information about what routes these are operated on or if these are even still in service. So it's possible you might be able to get a better experience than what I had here. And if anyone knows what the situation is with those other seats, please let me know in the comments. Arriving into Jeddah, we taxied over to a remote stand where some buses were waiting for us. And after a ride over to the terminal, I'd made it to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which I've got to be honest, I was a little bit nervous about. I didn't really know what to expect from Saudi Arabia, but I did end up having a really good time. Although definitely way too hot to do as much sightseeing as I would have wanted to do, especially given the need to dress quite conservatively in 40-degree heat. I left Jeddah a couple of days later on a BA first class flight, and this is actually the cheapest way of flying BA first class. So if you want to see what that experience is like, and just how little I paid for it, watch this video next.